Hi, I'm Leo. I'll tell my story.
This small room, filled with the gentle heat of humming electronics, has become my world. The glow from the monitor is the only light I need, painting my hands in a pale blue sheen. I can feel the familiar focus settling in, the world narrowing down to the logic unfolding on the screen. A stray lock of my dark hair falls across my forehead, but I barely notice. In this space, I am exactly where I am supposed to be. Building, creating, solving. The system I designed for my father's business is my greatest practical achievement. It started as a simple script to organize invoices and grew into the central nervous system of the entire operation. I took the beautiful, chaotic mess of his life's work and gave it order. I turned stacks of paper and forgotten promises into clean data and predictable outcomes. The comfort my family enjoys now, the stability, I wrote that into existence, line by line.
On another screen, I have my own project open. The grander vision. The thing my partner and I are building in stolen hours between our other work. This system for my father was the proof that my ideas could work in the real world. It was the seed. The rich, bitter scent of coffee breaks my trance. My father sets a chipped mug down on the desk, his movements slow and deliberate. You will burn your eyes out staring at that thing, Leo. Your brother was asking about the numbers for the upcoming shipment. I can't hide my smile. I turn the screen toward him, a map of interconnected processes and live data. It's all ready. Quantities, arrival times, even the best possible route for the delivery truck. All he needs to do is press one button. I've made it that simple.
He looks at the screen, his eyes not quite following the flow of information, and places a heavy hand on my shoulder. You have a good mind, son. All of this, you have done so much for us. The words land deep inside me, a warmth spreading through my chest. This is what I work for, this recognition, to know that he sees me. That warmth turned to ice the very next evening. We were gathered around the dinner table, the whole family. My father wiped his mouth and set down his napkin, a signal that something important was coming. Your mother and I have been talking about the future, he began, his gaze moving between me and my brother. I can't keep up the pace forever. It's time to make some changes. My breath caught. This was the moment. He would finally see that the future of his business was already here, running on the servers in the next room. That it was me.
He turned to my brother. I want you to take the lead. You have a way with people that I respect. You will steer the ship now. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at my brother, who nodded, a faint, satisfied smile on his face. He's a good man, but he doesn't understand the engine that powers the ship he's been given to steer. My voice felt foreign, thin. And the system, the access? My father looked at me with an expression that was almost pitying. You have your own path, Leo, your own big ideas. We cannot ask you to be tied down here. Your brother will manage the system now. You can show him what he needs to know. He said it so calmly, as if he were discussing the weather. This is what is best for the family. We must all play our part. Play our part? The thought screamed inside my head. I didn't just play a part, I built the stage. I am not a temporary tool to be used and set aside. I don't understand, I managed to say, the hurt clotting my words. That system is... My decision is final. he said, and his tone was a solid wall. The conversation was over. I retreated to my room that night. The feeling wasn't anger. It was a profound erosion of something fundamental. I had given them a part of my mind, and they treated it as a common appliance to be handed off to the next person. My value was not inherent. It was conditional, disposable. As I stared at the lines of code on my own personal project, it ceased to be a dream. It became a necessity, my only remaining truth.
The night after I left Robert's office, my world had crumbled. I felt like nothing. In an instant, I had been shut out of the family business I had dedicated years to, the thing I breathed and lived for. My father's words echoed in my ears. You have your own big projects. But what about my labor, my dreams? That system was like my child, and it had been ripped from my hands without a second thought. The next morning, I tried to pull myself together. Maybe my father was right. Maybe greater opportunities lay ahead. My own venture, that was where my true focus should be. I went to our office to meet my partner. He seemed as energetic and motivated as ever. "Leo, I have great news," he said, tossing a folder onto the desk. "I've set up a meeting with a major investment firm. We're going to pitch our project to them. This is the big break we've been waiting for." I pushed the sadness aside and smiled. Maybe everything had happened for a reason. Perhaps this betrayal was a sign for me to focus on what I was truly meant to do. From that day on, I devoted myself entirely to our company. I worked tirelessly, day and night. I wrote code, prepared presentations, and perfected our pitch. This was my chance to prove my worth, not as a son in his father's shadow, but as an innovator on my own terms. The day of the presentation arrived. I was nervous, but confident. Our idea was solid. Our prototype was functional. This was it. We entered the sleek, modern conference room. The representatives from the firm were polite but scrutinizing. I began the presentation, losing myself in the flow of explaining the technology, the vision, the future we were building. I was in my element. It was only towards the end that I noticed it. My partner was oddly quiet. He let me do all the talking, only occasionally nodding. When the head of the panel asked a detailed technical question about the core algorithm, a question I knew was mine to answer, my partner cut in smoothly. "I'd be happy to elaborate on the proprietary architecture we've developed," he said, and began explaining my work, my code, as if it were his own. He used "I" instead of "we." A cold knot tightened in my stomach. After the meeting, the lead investor shook my partner's hand firmly. "A brilliant concept. Your insight is remarkable. We'll be in touch directly." They left the room, barely acknowledging me. I stood there, frozen. The silence that followed was deafening. "What was that?" I finally asked, my voice barely a whisper. He turned to me, and the familiar, energetic mask was gone. His expression was cold, calculative. "It's business, Leo. They see a single strong visionary, not a divided partnership. I'll handle the negotiations from here. You should take some time off." The realization hit me like a physical blow. He hadn't just taken credit, he was cutting me out completely. The project, the code, the dream, it was all being stolen. The betrayal from my family was a deep wound, but this was a precise, professional execution. I had been so blind. I had given him everything, trusting him like a brother. Just as I had trusted my family, and just like them, he saw my value only as something to be exploited and discarded. I walked out of that building into the bright sunlight, feeling a darkness deeper than any night. I had nothing left. Stepping out of the skyscraper, The city felt alien. The shock was a physical blow, leaving me numb. My partner hadn't just stolen my company. He had erased me from its history with cold, surgical precision. The digital purge was absolute. Emails? Silent. Servers? Locked. Every login returned a cold, access denied. He had rewritten our story, painting me as a dismissed contributor. I was a ghost in the machine I built. Days of frantic calls yielded nothing. The investment firm was politely impenetrable. My former partner's silence was a loud, mocking verdict. The final blow came from my lawyer. His tone was grim. "Their case is airtight, Leo. They claim you were uninvolved, that the core work wasn't yours. Contesting it means a long, costly lawsuit with little certainty." The word costly echoed in my empty apartment. I had no funds for a legal war. My savings were gone, devoured by the dream now stolen. Debts circled like vultures: rent, credit cards, broken promises. The eviction notice was the ultimate confirmation. A stark, official page taped to my door. I packed a single suitcase, selling what I could, abandoning the rest. There was no family to call, no safety net. My father's rejection felt like a cruel prophecy. I rented a small, bleak room in a shared house. It smelled of dust and despair. Standing there, suitcase at my feet, the numbness finally broke. A wave of anger, shame, and grief crashed over me. I had lost everything: my trust, my work, my future. The descent was complete. I had nothing left.
The silence in that small room was a living thing. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating. It was the sound of nothing left. The first few days were a blur. I didn't leave. I didn't shower. I just sat on the edge of the thin mattress, staring at the cracks in the opposite wall, tracing them like a map to nowhere. The initial storm of anger and grief had passed, leaving behind a flat, gray emptiness. I was a shell. Hunger, a blunt and persistent animal, finally forced me out. The world outside my door felt too bright, too loud. People moved with purpose, their lives intact, their futures certain. I felt like a ghost walking among them, invisible and utterly disconnected. I bought the cheapest bread and cheese I could find, the coins in my palm feeling like the sum total of my worth. I needed a job, any job. My resume, a document that once spoke of innovation and potential, was now a lie. It was a testament to a person who no longer existed, a person who had been systematically dismantled. I couldn't list my own company. I couldn't use my partner as a reference. The gap in my employment was a black hole, and any potential employer who looked into it would likely find the carefully placed rumors my former partner had sown. I applied for everything: office junior, data entry clerk, warehouse picker. The rejections were swift and impersonal. Automated emails: "We have decided to pursue other candidates." Your experience does not align with our current needs. Each one was a small confirmation of my new reality. I was unemployable. I was a damaged commodity. The last of my money was a handful of crumpled bills. Desperation, a sharper and more urgent feeling than hunger, led me to a part of the city I'd never known. Garages and workshops lined the streets, the air thick with the smell of grease and gasoline. I saw an old man struggling with a heavy transmission, his face slick with sweat. Without thinking, I walked over.
Need a hand? My voice was rough from disuse. He looked up, surprised, wiping his forehead with a greasy rag. He eyed my worn but clean clothes, my soft hands. You know anything about engines, kid? No, I said. The truth, the only thing I had left to offer. I need work. He studied me for a long moment, not seeing a failed entrepreneur, just a pair of willing hands. He nodded toward a pile of discarded parts. Start by cleaning that up. I'll give you lunch for it. It wasn't a job offer. It was a charity, and I took it. I spent the afternoon hauling metal, my back aching, my hands getting dirty for the first time in years. The work was mindless, physical, and for a few hours it silenced the noise in my head. There was no betrayal here, no complex code, no legal battles, just a simple task. Lift, carry, sort. At the end of the day, he handed me a small, folded bill. It wasn't much, but it was honest. It was something I had earned with my own 2 hands, something no one could steal from me. I walked back to my room as the sun set. The money felt heavy in my pocket. I was exhausted, sore, and covered in grime. I sat on my bed and looked at my hands. The dirt was ground into the lines of my palms. They were no longer the hands of a coder. They were the hands of someone who had nothing, and who had just taken the first small step toward building something real from nothing. The bottom wasn't an end. It was a foundation. Hard, cold, and unforgiving, but solid. And for the first time since the fall began, I felt something other than despair. I felt a flicker of resolve. The garage became my new world. My days fell into a rhythm of gritty physical simplicity. Lift, carry, clean, repeat. My muscles ached constantly. My hands grew rough and permanently stained with grease. The old mechanic, Elias, was a man of few words. He didn't ask about my past. He only cared if I could handle a wrench without dropping it. For the first time in months, the noise in my head quieted. There was no room for betrayal or self-pity when a transmission needed lifting. I started observing, not as a customer, but as part of the machine. I saw the chaos Elias fought every day. Misplaced invoices scrawled on napkins, inventory scribbled on a fading whiteboard, frantic calls to suppliers to see if a crucial part had even been ordered. It was a disaster of disorganization. It was my father's hardware store all over again, but bigger, messier, fueled by gasoline and frustration. One afternoon, watching Elias tear apart the office looking for a lost invoice, the spark hit. It wasn't a grand vision for a tech empire. It was a simple, elegant solution to a stupid, frustrating problem. A digital tool so simple a mechanic could use it with greasy fingers. A system to track inventory, orders, and clients, not for a Fortune 500 company, but for the countless small shops like this one, drowning in paper and chaos. That night, in my barren room, I didn't feel despair. I felt a jittery, electric energy. I dug out my old laptop, its sleek design a relic from another life. It booted slowly, groaning in protest. I opened a blank coding environment. The screen glowed in the dark, a familiar beacon. My fingers, now clumsy and thickened from manual labor, hovered over the keys. For a terrifying second, nothing came. Had I lost it? Had that part of my brain been wiped clean along with everything else? I took a breath, closed my eyes, and thought of Elias's frustrated face. I thought of the messy whiteboard. And then I began to type. The code wasn't complex or groundbreaking. It was functional. It was clean. It was a solution. The rhythm returned, faster and more urgent than before. I wasn't coding for investors or for glory. I was coding to fix a problem I had touched with my own hands. The clicks of the keyboard were no longer a nostalgic sound. They were the sound of a weapon being forged. I worked through the night, not for a dream, but for a purpose. The spark had caught, and it was starting to burn. The code flowed from my fingers like a second language I'd never forgotten. But this was different. It wasn't the abstract, elegant algorithms for investors. This code was practical, sturdy, and born from the grease and grit of Elias's garage. I built a simple interface, large buttons designed for fingers that had just put down a wrench. I created a system to log inventory with a barcode scanner Elias could buy for cheap, a calendar for scheduling that synced with a simple phone app, and an invoice generator that didn't require a degree in accounting to use. I showed it to Elias on my laptop one afternoon. He grunted, skeptical, his arms crossed over his chest. "I don't have time for computer nonsense, kid." "Just try it," I said, my voice earnest. "For the invoices, humor me." Reluctantly, he sat down. I guided him through creating a new invoice. He typed with 2 fingers, scowling. Then he hit save. The program automatically filed it under the client's name, calculated the total, and stored a copy. He needed to find it a minute later. Instead of tearing the office apart, he typed the name. It appeared instantly. He was silent for a long moment.
Huh.
He grunted. It was the highest praise I'd ever received. Word spread. Other small business owners, friends of Elias, started asking about the magic computer thing. The mechanic, the baker down the street, a local furniture restorer, they all had the same problems. Chaos, lost time, and wasted money. I adapted the code for each of them, simplifying it even further. I wasn't building a monolithic platform. I was crafting individual keys for individual locks. I didn't have a company. I had a purpose. The small payments they could afford, sometimes in cash, sometimes in trade, were enough to keep my room and my laptop running. It was a barter economy, built on solved problems. One of the shop owners, a woman named Clara who ran a print shop, knew a guy. "He's not like those big fun sharks," she said. "He likes things that are real, useful." The meeting wasn't in a skyscraper. It was in Clara's back office, smelling of paper and ink. The investor, a man named Mr. Evans, was older, with calm eyes. He didn't want a slick pitch. He wanted to see the software. He asked Clara questions. "Has it saved you time? How much?" He asked me why I built it. I told him the truth, not about the betrayal, but about the problem, about the frustration I saw in Elias's eyes, about building something that served, not something that sold. He listened, he nodded. Then he said, "I know a few people who could use something like this, real people. Let's talk about how to get this to them properly." It wasn't a massive check. It was a seed, an acknowledgement that this simple, honest solution had value. That night, back in my small room, I looked at the code not as a lifeline, but as a foundation. It was humble, it was strong, and it was entirely mine. The ascent had begun, not with a roar, but with a quiet, determined whisper. The validation from the investor was more than capital. It was a catalyst. It allowed me to move from my cramped room into a small, unpolished space, a single room above a bakery, where the warm, constant scent of bread was a tangible reminder of the community I aimed to serve. The space was humble, with a leaky faucet and a window overlooking a bustling street where real businesses operated. It was imperfect, and it was perfect. I didn't seek out charismatic salespeople or graduates from prestigious schools. Instead, I brought on a sharp, personable young man recommended by the print shop owner, and a quietly talented developer I met online, who cared more about solving real-world problems than chasing trends. Our approach was simple: listen, adapt, and solve. We didn't force our tool on anyone. We offered it as a solution for those who needed it. Months turned into a year of steady, purposeful work. Growth came not through aggressive advertising, but through genuine word of mouth. A mechanic told a baker, who told a florist, who told a cafe owner. We weren't just building a user base. We were fostering a network of trust, one solved problem at a time. Meanwhile, my former partner's venture seemed to be everywhere. Featured in glossy magazines, hailed in headlines for its rapid expansion and staggering valuations. His company embodied ambition and scale, a symbol of high-stakes innovation. Occasionally, I'd see his photo in articles, that same polished, confident smile, but it stirred nothing in me. We were operating in entirely different worlds. He was selling promise, I was providing practicality.
Then came the convergence. I was asked to speak on a modest panel titled Technology for Everyday Business, held in a university auditorium filled with local entrepreneurs and students. I spoke about designing for real needs, the importance of listening, and the value of simplicity. During the question period, someone asked, "How do you respond to the approach of larger all-in-one platforms that claim to serve small businesses?" Before I could answer, a woman stood up, the owner of a local bookstore. "I used one of those platforms," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "It was overwhelming, expensive, and when I needed help, no one responded. I switched to the tool Leo built. He answered my questions himself over the weekend." Then others joined in: a mechanic, a baker, a florist. One by one, they shared their experiences. This wasn't a rehearsed endorsement. It was an authentic outpouring of support. They spoke not about features, but about reliability. Not about innovation, but about being heard. After the panel, as the room buzzed with conversation, I noticed a familiar figure near the exit. My former partner stood there, impeccably dressed as always, his expression unreadable. He had been watching, listening. His eyes scanned the room, the people, their energy, their loyalty with cool detachment. There was no nod, no acknowledgement. He simply turned and left, dissolving into the evening crowd. I remained, surrounded by the people I had built this for, feeling a profound sense of clarity. His world was one of scale and spectacle. Mine was one of substance and service. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't a competition. It was a confirmation. We had passed like ships in the night, moving toward vastly different horizons. And for the first time, I knew with certainty which journey mattered. The climb was over. I had found my footing. I nodded. I had known this would happen. Technology moves forward. My first creation for him was a stepping stone, not a destination. "He asked me to come," my father admitted, the words seeming to cost him something. "He thought maybe you could help." I looked at my father, really looked at him.
I saw not the imposing figure of my youth, but a tired man trying to bridge a chasm he himself had helped create. The anger was gone, burned away in the long months of struggle and renewal. What remained was a quiet clarity. "I can't give him special treatment," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "That wouldn't be fair to the others who trusted me when I had nothing to offer but a promise. But he is welcome to become a client. He can subscribe to the service, just like everyone else. My team will provide the same support." My father searched my face, looking for resentment, for hesitation. He found only certainty. He slowly nodded, a deep, weary understanding dawning in his eyes. He saw that I was no longer his disappointed son or the cast-out heir. I was a man who had built his own table, and now invited others to join him on his own terms. "He'll tell him," he said, rising from his chair. He paused at the door, looking back. "You built a good thing here, Leo." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. After he left, I stood at the window, watching the street below. The mechanic was waving to the baker. The florist was arranging a delivery. My world was small, but it was interconnected, resilient, and built on a foundation of mutual respect. I had sailed through storms of betrayal and navigated the depths of failure. I had chased horizons that turned out to be mirages, and in the end, I had not found a dazzling city on a hill. I had built a quiet harbor, and that was more than enough. Time, which had once dragged me through despair, now flowed with a steady, purposeful current. My work was no longer about building a company, but about tending a garden I had planted with my own hands. Our small team grew organically, each new person chosen not for their pedigree, but for their shared belief in building things that last, tools that served, not sold. One afternoon, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway of my office. The scent of fresh bread from below seemed to intensify. It was my father. He looked older, the lines on his face deeper, his posture less certain. He held his cap in his hands, turning it over slowly. "Leo," he said, his voice softer than I remembered. "Father," I replied, my own voice calm, devoid of the old yearning for his approval. I gestured to a simple chair. "Please, sit." He did, his eyes taking in the room, the functional furniture, the notes from clients pinned to the wall, the absence of pretense. "I hear things," he began, his gaze finally settling on me. "People talk. They say you've done well, built something real." "I've tried," I said simply. A long silence stretched between us, filled with the distant sounds of the street and the bakery below. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was simply there, a space that needed to be acknowledged. "Alex," he started, then stopped, choosing his words with uncharacteristic care. "The business, it's not what it was. The old system, it's not enough anymore." He struggles,